All right, it's time to go behind enemy lines again. And joining us today is a friend of mine and Chris Halicke from DKPittsburgh.com. Chris, first off, man, how you doing? It's good to see you.
Doing good, man. Long time no see. Even though we saw each other at the MLB All Star game, though, that was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, that was a good time, man. Kind of random. I mean, Chris and I used to cover the Rangers, actually. Now he covers the Steelers. I cover the Cowboys, two very different teams and two very different situations heading into week 5. Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, Chris, doesn't get much bigger than this. I guess my first question for you is quarterback. I think we got to start at quarterback. You know, Russell Wilson's been kind of that like, will he, won't he? You know, that kind of weird inactive, active. Seems like Justin Fields the guy. What can you kind of tell us about the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh?
Well, right now, Justin Fields is QB1. Whether Mike Tomlin wants to actually say it or not, I mean, Sunday night it's going to be Justin Fields. That's what the Steelers are preparing for. There is a chance that Russell Wilson actually becomes an active number 2 quarterback Sunday night. He is ramping up in terms of his what he's able to do in practice. You know, he's been a limited participant for ever since aggravating that calf injury ahead of the week 1 opener, and then yeah, so now it's pretty much like, okay, what do they do? You know, if Russ is getting close to full health, but the thing is that Justin Fields has played really, really well. I mean, there's whether you look at traditional stats like passer rating or some of the EPA number like metrics like EPA or completion percentage above expected, anything like that. His numbers are pretty solid across the board, and they're 3-1 and almost for 4-0 if they were able to finish off that comeback against the Colts. So I have a hard time thinking they're going to stray from Justin right now, but definitely for Sunday night, it's going to be Justin Fields. Maybe you see Russell Wilson as an active number 2 for the first time this season, but Justin's won the ability to at least get that start week in and week out where they don't feel like they have to rush Russ back.
I feel like if we had if we took a drink every time we heard the word ramp up with a guy who's kind of coming off an injury, every beat reporter in the NFL would be drunk. Um, but kind of let's talk a little bit more about Justin Fields, because I think
Yeah.
conventionally when you think about Justin Fields, you think of speed, right? And you kind of go back to a Chicago tape and it's like, hey, if you kind of keep him in the pocket, you could beat him. That feels like it hasn't been necessarily the total case this season. I know the Cowboys struggled immensely against the Ravens with Lamar Jackson's speed in terms of zone reads and read options. In terms of trying to defend Justin Fields, why is it not as simple as just keep him in the pocket? Or maybe it is.
Well, the main reason, and I would think one game that you would look at for the Steelers is the game against the Chargers. He really threw very, very much in rhythm. He had 35 dropbacks in that game and scrambled once. Didn't necessarily mean that the protection was all that great. It just means that he was getting the ball out on time. He was seeing the field. He was making his reads and he was making throws based off of what he was seeing. That's kind of been the thing missing with Justin Fields. Now, it hasn't been exactly that in all 4 games. Every game presents a different challenge. This past week, he didn't see as much protection. And so he did have to improvise a little bit more. And that's why you saw the 20-yard lost sack fumble that not only knocked them out of field goal range, but turned the ball over. And they're like, oh, there's the Justin Fields we all knew in Chicago. But then there's also the spectacular where he scrambles out of the pocket, sees George Pickens running down the field and makes a throw across his body. And it's pinpoint accuracy right on the money. And it's a huge explosive play down the field. So he's finding ways to continue to kind of get to the things that he can do spectacularly, but he's being very efficient as an actual passer. And I think that's the thing that's really kind of solidified his ability to stay as the number 1 quarterback right now in Pittsburgh, is because he's completing over 70% of his passes. His passer rating is like just under 100. I think it's like 98 or something like that. It's like just under 100. His completion percentage above expected is at a career high and amongst the leaders in the NFL. I think the Steelers right now are 10th in the NFL in dropback EPA. Like, you look at whether it's the traditional stats or the advanced metrics, he's being an efficient passer. And that's the thing that I think is at some point it's going to be like, okay, when are you actually going to start making plays with your legs? Like the ones that we saw where he was like rattling off 40 yards, 50 yards. We haven't really seen that yet. He hasn't really been the guy that's been like shredding defenses with his legs. And so if he hits that level, we're talking about superstar type quarterback here. He's just not quite there yet, but the baseline that he's laying as a passer has been really impressive so far.
Yeah, no Micah Parsons this week, no Demarcus Lawrence. So that's going to be a challenge for the Cowboys with Marshawn Nealon, Chauncey Golston, Carl Lawson, and the new addition KJ Henry. That'll be definitely some trouble to keep him in the pocket there. But also, let's take a look at the Steelers' running game, because I think one thing, you're familiar with a lot of Dallas stuff, and one of the big talking points has been the lack of a Cowboys running game so far. They don't have enough temps, we say. But I think we can evaluate that it hasn't been good so far. You go look at Pittsburgh, though, it also hasn't been that spectacular. Najee Harris kind of hasn't lived up to his expectations. I thought Jalen Warren has shown a lot of potential. It doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of reps. What can you tell us about the Pittsburgh Steelers run game against the Dallas rush defense that has not been good, even though it's coming off its best game?
The one thing that, so just with the Steelers run game first, they're 10th in the NFL in rushing right now. At least they were heading into week 5, ahead of the Thursday night game. And so, but that's like on the surface. That's out of sheer will to just run the football. And if they're not converting third downs the way that they have been, they're not 10th in the NFL in rushing. They're not efficient. And I mean, when you look at actual rush EPA and rushing success rate, it's near the bottom of the league. They're not an efficient run game right now, which is surprising because it's an Arthur Smith offense. Arthur Smith is, I mean, he was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee when Derrick Henry was becoming King Henry. His 2 most productive seasons were with Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator. That was never a question in Atlanta, regardless of anything that he did wrong in Atlanta. They were going to run the football, and they weren't this inefficient. So it begs the question, is it Najee Harris? Is it the offensive line? I think you could look at a number of different things. The one matchup I'm kind of curious about, and it's not necessarily like a player versus player. It's almost like a coaching concept versus coaching concept, or how they're going to scheme things up. The Steelers have been most efficient running inside zone. The Cowboys are giving up well over 5 yards a carry against inside zone. Are the Steelers going to try to exploit that? Are they just going to try to run a whole bunch of inside zone to see if that's what gets this running game going? Because I think from the Steelers' perspective, if they're looking at this game of being like, we have to be able to run the football in this game. This is the worst rush defense we've faced so far this season. I know the Colts don't look great in terms of total numbers, but their metrics are way better than their total numbers. This is going to be the worst rush defense they're going to be facing. They're going to look at this as a game and being like, we have to be able to run the football. And if we don't, there are some serious issues here.
Yeah, I think it'll be a big challenge for Mazi Smith, who's coming off his best game, in terms of that inside zone. He had the best game of his career. Can he build on that? That's something we're going to see against Pittsburgh. Let's switch gears a little bit now, Chris. Let's go to the defense. It seems like, Alex Highsmith doesn't seem like he's going to play, if I'm correct. If you give me an update on kind of some defensive injuries. And also the guy I want to ask you specifically about, kind of a 2-part question here, is Nick Herbig. Sorry, I thought Nate Herbig. I get the two confused all the time. Is Nick Herbig.
I feel you.
Yeah, at edge rusher, a guy that could be replacing Alex Highsmith and has done a pretty good job. Also seems like a guy that is a good complement to TJ Watt. So just a little defensive update in terms of injuries, and tell us a little bit more about Herbig.
Yeah, Alex Highsmith is definitely out for this week. He aggravated a groin injury that he had during the preseason. I think against the Chargers. He was out last week. He's going to be out again this week, so he won't be there. Alex Highsmith is a guy that he's a really good complement to TJ Watt. And one of the main reasons why is because he sets the edge over on his side. Whether that's obviously, we're talking about run defense, we're talking about setting the edge, but he also does a really good job of pushing the pocket, creating pressure for the quarterback. And that just allows TJ on the other side to just be TJ. Nick Herbig as a pass rusher can be very, very dangerous. He's very, very fast off the line. If he gets that, cadence down of when they're going to snap the ball, in terms of the silent count and everything like that, he can be explosive. I'm curious about how he's actually going to be as a run defender. The tape didn't look great against the Colts. He didn't set the edge very well. I immediately watching the game live in the press box, I'm like, they miss Alex Highsmith on that side. And that is I'm thinking it's the Colts. It's Jonathan Taylor. They're going to try to run the ball, and running to the left, which was to that side, that makes a lot of sense, and they did that. So if the Cowboys are looking for a weakness there, don't run towards TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. Run towards Nick Herbig. run towards that side. So that's going to be kind of what I would think should be the place to go if they are going to try and run the football. But they have to watch for him as a pass rusher because he can't get back there. He had 2 sacks when he came in for Highsmith in the Chargers game. So this is going to be a situation in which the Cowboys have to watch for him, especially when Dak is in just drop back mode.
Yeah, Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy, they haven't run the ball a lot, Chris, but he said this week they're going to have to, because if they're going to want to play complementary football, that's going to be a mandate against this Steelers team. I'm curious to see how Herbig also does in pass rush situations against rookie left tackle Tyler Guyton, who has struggled with holding specifically, especially with guys kind of getting underneath him. And I think at 6'2", right, with Herbig, he has the chance to kind of get underneath him and maybe throw some rib moves.
For sure.
Yeah, that's going to be something to watch. Quickly, let's kind of touch on the secondary a little bit. Is Joey Porter a guy that's Joey Porter Jr., for all those people out there, is he a guy that might follow CeeDee Lamb? Is that going to be their number one option? How do you go about defending CeeDee Lamb, who without Brandon Cooks is clearly going to be the Cowboys' number one target?
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr., if he had his way, he would be following the number one receiver every single snap on defense. That's just what he wants to be. He wants to be that guy. And to be fair, the Steelers kind of gave him that as a rookie. He got to a point where he was following around, like he followed around DeAndre Hopkins a lot when they played Tennessee last year. He followed around DK Metcalf when they played Seattle last year. He's pretty much followed around the number one receiver every time that they've played somebody. He is, unfortunately for him and for the Steelers, coming off possibly his worst game as a pro. He was not good in Indianapolis. He dropped an interception in the end zone. On the very first play of the game, Anthony Richardson threw I don't know if Pro Football Focus called it a turnover-worthy play. I would have threw it straight into a cover 3 zone, not a cover 3 window, straight into a zone in which Joey Porter Jr. should, at bare minimum, have had a PBU. Instead, it was a very, very large chunk play on the first play of the game. So he wants to be the guy. The Steelers have been pretty tight-lipped of whether they're actually going to let him follow CeeDee Lamb around or not. I would still expect to see the Steelers have Joey on CeeDee, especially when they go man coverage. They're not strictly, okay, this guy's on the right, this guy's on the left, even though they do play a lot of zone. They're a cover 3 zone defense. I still expect when they are in man for sure that Joey Porter Jr. is going to be the guy most of the time on CeeDee Lamb. It just makes a lot of sense. He is their best corner. Dante Jackson's been really, really good for them this year. It's been a nice change of scenery for him from Carolina. But Joey Porter Jr. is going to be the guy. If they get into that mode where they're like, okay, let's put our guy on their best guy, that's what's going to happen.
Man, I feel like everyone has a nice change of scenery when they leave Carolina. Maybe something there. But, I want to touch on that game. You mentioned, Joey Porter Jr.'s struggle specifically. It seemed like a struggle for the Colts the Steelers in their first loss of the season.
Yeah.
As a guy that's been covering them and watching them, do you take a lot of, do you take a lot from that game? Do you say, hey, maybe this is a little bit closer to the mean of who they are? Or maybe do you call it a bad game? How do you kind of evaluate now 4 games into the season exactly where the Steelers team is?
I think it's more of the outlier than it is more of like a regression to what this defense will actually kind of look like. This is still a really, really good defense. And for the most part, Alex Highsmith is out, obviously, but for the most part, they are healthy right now. I almost feel like I need to knock on wood or something like that for their sake, because last year they were not healthy. Minka Fitzpatrick was banged up. Cam Hayward was banged up for all of the year, pretty much. They had a lot of injuries last year on that side of the ball, and still finished, I think, 6th and 7th in scoring. So look at what they did against Atlanta, and also take into account what Kirk Cousins did on Thursday Night Football, throwing for 509 yards against the Buccaneers. They held that Atlanta offense to 10 points. They made Bo Nix look like a rookie quarterback. I mean, they really made him look like a rookie quarterback. And then what they did against the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins was leading the NFL in rushing and averaging almost 10 yards a carry heading into that game, and they completely stifled him. I think it was more of a Shane Steichen, the head coach of the Colts, former offensive coordinator of the Eagles, just knows how to attack cover 3. He knows where the bones are buried there. The Steelers have actually had to face Steichen 3 straight years now. He was OC of the Eagles. They faced him in 22. They put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. They faced him as head coach of the Colts last year. They put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. They faced him this year. They put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. There's kind of a trend there that I think it's more Shane Steichen just has Mike Tomlin's number in terms of how to attack the Steelers the defense specifically, and how they run cover 3. So I would expect, especially in a game like this, for the Steelers to kind of get back to what they want to do. Um, but when you're talking about Dak Prescott, who can air it out, when you're talking about CeeDee Lamb, who one of the most explosive, if not the most explosive receiver in the league, this could be a situation in which the Steelers have to maybe make some changes. Maybe they're going to blitz a little bit more often than they have this year. I don't know, but I still think this is on paper a top 5 defense in the league.
One of the things I love about Tomlin the most is like, you know exactly what you're getting with the Mike Tomlin team. You know, the scheme not going to change that much. The names change, players change, and yet, you know, you're still going to get that tough Tomlin team that does what they do. And I'm curious, Chris, what you think they're going to do tonight against the Cowboys. Okay, I'm putting you on the spot now. A little prediction I'm hoping to get from you, and I'll be honest with you. I'm picking the Steelers to win this game. I think the Cowboys need to go 1-2 in the next 3 games, to even salvage a chance at the postseason. What do you think happens tonight, though?
I do think that this is the game that I'm not going to say that it's going to be some sort of like, oh, they're going to rush for 250 yards or something stupid like that. But I do think this is going to be the game in which the Steelers do get the running game going on a more efficient basis. They're going to average over 4 yards a carry, or maybe even close to 5 yards a carry, something along those lines. That will help them control the clock. The Steelers heading into last week, those numbers went down a little bit, but heading into last week against the Colts, they were 2nd in the NFL in time of possession. They were 7th in the NFL, 7th in the NFL in third down percentage. They know how to sustain drives. They know how to move the chains. If they can do that, I think they're just going to wear down an already banged up Dallas defense. And if that's the case, then I think you're going to start seeing those rushing numbers go up and up throughout as the game progresses. I am concerned about just because of the tape that the Steelers put out there last week, that Dak and CeeDee or the Cowboys, at least through the air, are going to be able to hit on some big plays. I also am concerned about, are the Steelers going to be able to get home with a 4-man pass rush? I still think the Steelers do win this game. I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be some sort of blowout. I've got 23-20 in terms of a final score. I think the Steelers offense is starting to figure some things out, especially in the drop back game. So I think that they can hit on some big plays, especially if Justin Fields, can continue to be efficient as a passer. But I also think the Cowboys are going to be able to put up at least 20 points on this defense, just because I just think I have a lot of respect for what Dak and CeeDee and what they can do through the air. So I think it's 23-20 Steelers. Close game. I could see either team winning, but this seems like a game the Steelers should be able to run the football. So we'll see if it actually happens.
Yeah, it's a classic matchup. Steelers, Cowboys, go back to the Super Bowls in the 70s, Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a fun one. He's Chris Halicke, and you can find him on X at Chris Halicke, Halicke. And you can find him writing at dkpittsburgh.com. Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. Always good to catch up with you, man. I hope to see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
We all silly like the mayor.